And so one of the things that we have found is, and let me just give you an example that I think will be useful in this, is having a conversation with a company called Chatbooks here in the United States. And they turn Instagram books into photo books. And one of the things that they did is they had us come in, they administered the insight tool because they had a number of senior executives who they thought, they've been here for 6 or 7 years. We've got a great culture, but I'm concerned, it's been a long time. And in fact, when we administered the assessment, 3 out of the 4 were showing up or presenting in mastery. But then here's what happened. Because they now had this language of this S curve, which is so simple and therefore useful, they could have a conversation. And there were 3 very different outcomes. The first conversation went like this. Chief Marketing Officer says, "Oh, that's what's happening. It's not that I don't like working for Chatbooks. It's not that I don't like working for you, the CEO. It's that I'm not getting dopamine." And if you look at this S curve, it's basically a dopamine management exercise. She's like, I need to do something new. There wasn't a role for her. There wasn't something new for her there. She'd been doing it for 7 years. So she jumped to a new curve at another company. But because they now had this language, it was amicable. It wasn't this sense of betrayal. It was just, oh yeah, let's look at the data. Here's what the data, dopamine data, go somewhere else. So that was the first outcome. The second outcome was you had a person who was the president and he was presenting in mastery, but he'd only been in the role for about a year. So what was happening? Well, he had a conversation with the CEO who had said, I'm going to go jump to this new curve. And when I jump to this curve, you're going to be here president in this curve all by yourself. But the CEO hadn't quite jumped to the new curve. So he was still doing some of the president's job. So the president's like looking up and he's saying, well, you told me the mountain was 10,000 feet, but it's actually only 5,000 feet. So it led to a conversation to rescope the roles and responsibilities so that in fact, the president had that headroom that he thought he was going to have when he became the president. So a different conversation about carving out and scoping things properly. Third conversation was CTO taking on a bunch of new responsibilities, this idea of the portfolio that we mentioned a minute ago. He's now doing a bunch of launch point stuff. He's a CTO. He's supposed to know everything. And he's feeling kind of dumb some of the time. But this gave him permission to say, hey, team, portfolio of S curves, I'm doing some new stuff. I'm going to be kind of awkward, uncomfortable. And you might be doing some new stuff too. And then it makes it comfortable. It gave him permission to be at the launch point so that he could then present in the sweet spot. So that's part of what can happen when you have people in mastery and the kinds of conversations that can take place.
And the dopamine part, again, because this is a super point, the dopamine part is in the middle section, in the sweet spot, right? Because that's where right. Because in the beginning, it's really, really hard and it's like really hard sometimes, right? And then at the top, it's boring a little bit, right? And so what's interesting is that, and I think anyone that employs staff will basically know that the riskiest parts are the people that have just started and the people that have been there for a while.